In today's episode, we're going to be talking about, a bunch of different rookies, but specifically a couple that were really productive in college and no one's quite sure how. Come to think of it, I think we all have had a number of coworkers like that. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Lombardi Time Brews, where I'm your host, John Delray. Recently we already went through, 5 draft prospects the other day, plus Lucas Van Ness in a separate video. So today we're focusing on those last 7 draft picks. I'm going to give you the good, what they do well, the bad, why they weren't the first overall pick, what they need to work on, and then also how they fit in the current Packers roster. Before we dive in, though, just a couple quick bits of news that I want to make sure I cover because I'm just downright negligent if I don't. First of all, Jordan Love, he's been extended. Yes, the Packers did not pick up his 2024 option, his 5th-year option, that would have paid him about a guaranteed $20 million. Instead, they've extended his contract another year, still covering him through the same duration of time. Now, why would they do that instead of picking up the option? Well, like I said, the option's like $20 million guaranteed. In the extension that they gave him the opportunity to earn, it's believed, up to about $22.5 million. So Love's got the incentive of a little extra something there on the back end. But the Packers gave him less guaranteed money than the option called for, at only about $13.5 million guaranteed, it's believed. The other component of the deal could be, I'm still waiting on exact numbers from this. I haven't seen them on Over the Cap or anything like that. But it looks as though the Packers are also giving him a raise in 2023. And if you're looking for why Jordan may accept less guaranteed in 2024, it might have something to do with getting a raise in 2023. We just have yet to find out. And I'm going to hold off all my opinions or does this mean that the Packers don't believe in Jordan Love? As I've seen expounded too many places. No, I don't think it believes that at all. But until we can make any decisions, let's see some actual numbers and facts first. Moving on from that, how did the Packers give Jordan Love a raise in 2023 if they indeed did? Well, one thing that we know for sure that they did is they restructured Darnell Savage's contract. Yes, Savage entering his 5th-year option was due to make about $7.9 million, but by adding 4 void years to it, they essentially opened up about $5.5 million in cap right now. As we've been talking about the cap situation, we do know that this is money they could use rather pressingly. So while I know a lot of people don't really love the idea of kicking Darnell Savage's money into the future, especially if Savage doesn't have much of a future in Green Bay, it still gave him money now. The other thing that they did in this restructure is they didn't just push it forward in terms of the void years. They did it, I'm not familiar with the exact mechanics here because it's super nuanced, but they essentially structured some of them as roster bonuses, which leaves open the opportunity for a Darnell Savage re-sign or contract extension that doesn't follow all of the same dead cap rules as Adrian Amos's deal did, where the Packers may wind up bringing him back and still carry a world of dead cap anyway. So just something to keep in mind there as you're evaluating. And then the very last thing that I want to talk about is Randall Cobb is signing with the Jets. Yes, and a move that we all expected. I've been saying, why hasn't he signed yet? Everyone's expecting it. Well, he did. He signed a 1-year contract with the New York Jets today, coming in at a guaranteed total of $3 million and supposedly incentives to raise it up to $4 million. So the prospect of Randall Cobb coming back to Green Bay as a player coach, out the window. We can be done. He's going to go join all of his buddies. The big one remaining on the offensive side of the ball is Big Dog. Where's Mercedes Lewis going to go? We don't know yet. So today, 7 draft prospects. The good, the bad, the fit. And here are the prospects that I'm going to be covering today. It is Luke Musgrave, the tight end, Kobe Wooden, Dontavian Wix, Lou Nichols, Grant Dubose, Anthony Johnson Jr., and Carrington Valentine. So let's dive right in. First and foremost, that big hunk from Oregon State, Luke Musgrave. He's 22 years old. He's 6'5", 253 pounds, and he had a RAS score of 9.78. What's the good? He's a freak. Like, literally. He's one of Bruce Feldman's freaks. He puts out that report basically every spring saying, like, here's the college players that the athletic thresholds are just insane. And Luke Musgrave is absolutely on that list. He famously topped over 20 miles an hour running at the Senior Bowl, the first tight end to ever accomplish the feat. And if you're looking for an athletic comp, let's take a look at Travis Kelce, shall we? We did that during the draft live stream, and I think it's worth revisiting. You know, Travis Kelce had a 35-inch vert, Luke Musgrave a 36. Broad jump, 10'4" for Kelce, 10'5" for Musgrave, because he's a classic one-upper, apparently. 4.42 short shuttle for Kelce, 4.41 for Musgrave. 7.09 three-cone, identical numbers for Musgrave at 7.09. Kelce ran a 4.61 40, identical for Luke Musgrave, 4.61. A 2.72 20 for Travis Kelce, a 2.62 for Musgrave. And a 1.61 10 for Kelce, and a 1.54 for Musgrave. So you want the good? The man can run. He's strong. He's an athletic freak. That's it. Perhaps considered the highest ceiling of any tight end in this draft, above that of Darnell Washington, Michael Mayer, Cedric Kincaid even. Musgrave's athletic traits seem to be, if he can put it all together as a complete tight end, he could be something truly special. And the athletic numbers, as they comp to one of perhaps the best receiving tight end of all time, is quite friendly. Now the bad. His college production is pretty underwhelming. I mean, and you can chalk that up to a number of different things. Like, he did have really poor quarterback play for a stretch. It's believed that Oregon State just completely mismanaged their tight end. He obviously had the MCL injury last year, which only limited him to 2 games before suffering that injury. So, there's reasons for his productivity. But even before that injury, even as he was younger in his collegiate career, his production was never exactly outstanding. So this is a pick based upon the athletic traits and projections, not necessarily the fact that he racked up like 60 catches in a year. Other than that, his blocking does need work. While he's not Jimmy Graham, he can at least block. There are some issues with his technique. I read scouting reports regarding too frantic of hands, or not being able to really hold his weight against edge rushers that are coming in hot. So things that need to be addressed for Musgrave, no doubt about it. They do believe that if he were to develop more upper body strength, it would help in the blocking department. In terms of a fit with the Packers, meet your new tight end 1. Yeah, that's like it. Maybe you got Tucker Kraft as like the underneath guy. Maybe he's the more complete tight end right now. And you've got DeGuara as your H-back and an inline tight end occasionally, which I think we will see more of this year with Jordan Love under quarterback. And then you got Tyler Davis, who I don't think anyone really wants Tyler Davis, at least anyone in the fandom really wants him playing that much pure tight end. He's probably your special teamer. So here you have Musgrave as your athletic, seam-stretching, vertical threat tight end that the Packers have not had in a really long time. I mean, we're talking athletic traits that surpass that of Jermichael Finley, who may be the last true legitimate pass-catching threat that the Packers have truly had at the tight end position. Let's move on. Kobe Wooden, defensive lineman from the University of Auburn. Let's cover his specs first, shall we? 6'4", 273 pounds, a 9.26 RAS. He's 22 years old. In 2022, he posted 45 tackles, 11.5 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, and 35 pressures. Here's the good. He's highly versatile. He's grown up throughout college, and I mean quite literally grown up and out. The human being has just gotten bigger throughout the course of his collegiate career. But as he was growing, he kept on filling in different roles in Auburn's defense. And that's lent him some tremendous versatility now at this point in his career. He's a high-quality interior pass rusher who sheds blocks quickly and can get opposing offensive linemen backpedaling because of his explosive first step. He also has a nose for the football. He created 3 forced fumbles last year, as well as had 3 passes defended. But here's the bad. The man is currently listed at 273 pounds. Generally, to play defensive line for the Green Bay Packers, you got to weigh like 290. Obviously, a gap there. However, Patrick Moore, the assistant director of college scouting for the Packers, expressed that last year he believes Wooden actually played at like 285, and that there is quite a bit of room in his frame to add weight. But realistically, this is the bad. He's probably more so an interior pass rusher until he bulks up. I don't think anyone's really looking at Kobe Wooden right now and saying, that's a guy we want to roll out there in our goal line D to absorb space. Gilbert Brown, this is not. This guy needs to add on size and weight in order to truly be a dynamic part of their offensive line. Because in college, it did appear at times that he had great difficulty really setting an anchor, really holding his place, absorbing when the offensive linemen were coming at him as opposed to him going to them. So it's something that he has to develop into and perchance grow into. Nonetheless, at this stage in the game, where's his fit with the Packers? Probably an effective pass rusher. Right? Like the kind of that nickel defensive lineman, not quite playing edge yet, but someone who you're going to put in there in more specific passing downs to use his first step, use his instincts to get to the quarterback, and go hunting. And there's a lot worse uses for a fourth-round pick than that. Moving on to the next candidate, Dontavian Wix. 6'1", 205 pounds, 9.49 RAS. The man is 21 years old. He did have a 4.5 140. There's been some discrepancy, 4.62, 4.58, 4.51, whatever. 4.57 is the one that he ran at his pro day. That's what I used for the RAS number. 9.49 would be his RAS with that number. The good, if you're looking for a comp, I think the James Jones actually makes sense. I saw that floated around on Twitter. I think comping Wix to James Jones makes a world of sense because he's a guy who isn't necessarily going to burn past you, but he's going to use his body very effectively to make sure that he can make the contested catches. He also has elite jumping numbers, which he will utilize to get higher than you and make sure that he comes down with the ball. In addition to that, just listen to his 2021 stats. 57 catches, 1,203 yards, 9 touchdowns. NFL.com listed that 27 of those 57 catches went for 20 yards or more. Like almost half of his catches were considered big plays. I mean, that's tremendously like a high level of production. Okay, now let's get to the bad. 2022 sucked in comparison to 2021. He wound up with 30 catches, 430 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Now, those numbers do need to be adjusted because he did miss 4 games. 2 games for injury, 2 games because Virginia's season was cut short due to the mass shooting tragedy that occurred there. So, 2022, if you want to explain it away because of significant changes in Virginia's program or flaws at quarterback, I think there's an argument to be made. But does it completely tell the story to go from one of the nation's most productive college receivers to a guy who's getting 30 catches? This is not quite the same. And if you want to evaluate him outside of the stats just purely as a wide receiver, he probably uses his body too much and not enough wide receiver technique. That he uses his athleticism to get little bits of separation or to bully down with the ball, whereas he doesn't use crisp route running to just get open. And that is something you can guarantee that the Green Bay Packers are going to be working with him on. Now, where does he fit in this roster? Well, let's be honest. Wide receiver 1 and 2, you got Watson, you got Dobbs. Probably filling in at your wide receiver 3, slot, gadget, etc., is probably your new draft pick, Jaden Reed. And then you've got 4 through 7 right now, which I think is just kind of a big muddled mess that's going to work itself out in training camp. Because in that 4 through 7 area, you've got Dontavian Wix, Bo Melton, Samori Toure, and, who I'm going to get to in a little bit, Grant Dubose. And that doesn't even include any of the UDFAs. But I think the top 3 are set. 4 through however many they decide to keep, very not set. And Dontavian Wix is somewhere in that mix. Moving on to the next player would be running back Lou Nichols III from Central Michigan. The man is 21 years old. He's 5'9", 222 pounds. And he doesn't have a RAS score because he didn't do enough athletic testing. But here's the thing. You want good? Let's just look at stats for him. 2021, 1,848 yards rushing, an average of 5.4 yards per carry with 16 touchdowns. The man has been a definition of a workhorse throughout his collegiate career. He was one of the top backs nationwide, both in yards and touchdowns and carries in 2021. The additional good is his ability to run routes out of the backfield. Aaron Jones, LaDainian Tomlinson, Alvin Kamara, he is not, but he can capably come out of the backfield to run routes. You can see that over the last 2 years, he had 60 catches for 448 yards. The bad, though, he is very much a work in progress in pass pro, and we know how important that is in Green Bay. Maybe a tiny touch less so under LaFleur than it was under McCarthy, but it still is of the utmost importance for running backs to be able to conduct pass pro for the Green Bay Packers, and he is very much a work in progress. The other thing that's kind of a bad here, and why he was probably a 7th round pick, was despite his insane level of productivity in 2021, 2022, kind of like Wix, just didn't seem to match. And the question is, even with that productivity in 2021, how did he achieve it? It's not like he's Chris Johnson with elite speed. You don't see that. I mean, sure, he reads the line very, very well. He takes what's given to him. He makes the correct read more times than not. But he's not burning through the holes. He's not exploding through them either. And, well, if he's not a speed back, is he then a power back? No, probably not that either. It's not like he's little Derrick Henry running around either. So the question is, what type of running back is he? At Central Michigan, he just presented very much as a complete back. But someone who was good at speed and good at power, while not necessarily being great at either one. And in the NFL, generally, you've got to be great at least one. His fit, he's probably competing for that running back 3 job. I do think the Packers keeping 2 running backs on the active roster to start the year last year, I think that was an anomaly brought on by the Kylan Hill situation, amongst other things. I think ideally the Packers want to keep 3 running backs. And so that means Lou Nichols probably finds himself in some kind of competition with Patrick Taylor, as well as Taylor Goodson, and then of course himself. And speaking of Patrick Taylor, Taylor's probably a little bit more power versus speed, but Nichols is kind of reminiscent of that. Think back to watching Patrick Taylor run over the last couple of years. You saw a guy who capably could churn out yards. But was it power-packed? Was it fast? No. And that's kind of like Lou Nichols in college, except for 2021, where he did display more explosion. Nonetheless, though, for competing for running back 3, again, you could do worse. Moving on to the next prospect, this is going to be Grant Dubose. 6'2", 201 pounds, at 8.78 RAS. He is 21 years old from the University of Charlotte. Kind of a late developing wide receiver, doesn't have the most collegiate experience in the world. But the thing is, reports on him are massively all over the place. Zach Cruz, who writes for Packers Wire, calls him long and gangly. Ben Fennell, one of the best film junkies out there in my opinion, said that he has an elite release package. Meanwhile, Lance Zierlein for NFL.com said that he struggles against press corners. And all those kind of go together, kind of work against each other all at the same time. But the thing is, the man can play wide receiver. Over his last 2 years combined, he's had 124 catches, 1,682 yards, and 15 touchdowns. He's a willing run blocker. And so you might look at him and go, he's long and gangly without having MVS-style speed. Yet he's fast enough to get open. And he doesn't exactly have the most full frame in terms of musculature. It's not like he's a James Jones or Dontavian Wix. But yet he comes down with a good number of contested catches. So almost like Lou Nichols here, you have this world of productivity, and you're kind of just left with okay, but how? And that's not to sell these guys short. Like that's not at all a criticism, don't get me wrong. But sometimes, especially with later round picks, this is what you run into. You know, you look at them and you say, okay, what is that one defining trait that set you apart? When you get down to like the 6th, 7th rounds, it gets tougher to find that defining trait. But you do find a lot of guys who just found a way to play quality football. And there are some great highlights out there, especially on Twitter, of Grant Dubose who just found his way through lanes. He does have a good level of elusiveness for a wide receiver. And it's something that certainly will come in handy in Green Bay's system of wanting yards after the catch. So, what's the good? What's the bad? No one seems to agree. But the man can play wide receiver. And much like Dontavian Wix, Toure, Melton, he's in the mix for wide receivers 4 through 7. And I truly do believe that those roles are going to be assigned at training camp. 2 more to go. Number 1 would be Carrington Valentine, cornerback from the University of Kentucky, 21 years old, 5'11", 193 pounds, and a 9.29 RAS. Here's the good. I'm going to go through these last two a little bit quicker. Here's the good. The man is aggressive. Like, if you want him to play press man, and he's got a relatively simple man assignment, he can do it. And he'll do it really, really well. But you want him to play zone, or cover double moves, or do switches, it gets dicey really quick. That's where some of his coverage has real lapses in it. Another downer would be the fact that when it comes to the run game, a lot of his aggression seemingly just kind of disappears. So he is a press man corner who does that very, very well. Now, if you're looking for someone who's a true believer in him, I would look no further than Mel Kiper for ESPN. He called Valentine his 69th rated prospect in this draft, and he believes that Carrington will be a starting cornerback in the NFL for a long, long time, of which he has the physical profile. He has the willing aggression and the stickiness when it comes to simpler routes. If he can develop that into the other aspects of being a corner, then that assessment is spot on. And where does his fit in the team? Well, right now he's probably competing for cornerback 5. 1 through 4 are pretty well decided. Jair, Razul, Stokes, Nixon. But cornerback 5, Shamar Jean-Charles, some of those other, Keandre Thomas, who was on the practice squad for most of the year. He's in that mix for one of those bottom corner special teams type roles. And if you're wondering if Valentine is excited to play in Green Bay, yes. When asked in interviews who he molded his game after, one of the biggest answers was Jair Alexander. And he also referenced how he knows that Green Bay plays a lot of press man, which raised some eyebrows from the Packer faithful who were like, doesn't look like press man when they're 9 yards off and 3rd and 1, but like, okay, we see where you're going here. And he exuded a lot of excitement about playing in that style. The press man style, not the 9 yards off, 3rd and 1 style, don't get me wrong. Last player, the last draft pick that I'm going to talk about. And before I get here, I'm just getting a reminder. On Friday, I'm going to be going over all of the UDFAs with very quick profiles, just so that we know who is filling out the bottom of the roster as it stands right now. But the last draft pick, yeah, you know it. My favorite one, the one that made me so freaking happy, Anthony Johnson Jr., senior from Iowa State, safety, 5'11", 205 pounds, 813 res, and 23 years old. Look, I'm just going to tell the story again. This guy had been on multiple all-academic teams throughout his collegiate career. He was nominated for volunteerism and give back awards at Iowa State. And in his first 4 years of college, he was playing corner. And then they went to him and they said, hey, we want to have one of the best defenses in the country this year, and that means you need to switch to safety. Please do it. And he did. And then he went out there and he transitioned beautifully to safety. Now, the bad, about 80% of his snaps at safety still came in either the box or the slot. He didn't play a lot of like free center fielder type safety, which is arguably what the Packers have a larger need at. But nonetheless, if he can fit into that Adrian Amos role, doing a little bit more box, it could work out very, very well for the Green Bay Packers. The other real knock on his game, while he has the coverage skills of a corner playing safety, when you project him to being a free safety like center field type, does he have the sideline to sideline speed in order to cover that much space? And that is a legitimate question. Projecting, you like to think that he can, but that's exactly what it is. It's a projection and a hope. But ultimately, at the end of the day, he's going to be in the mix at safety. I think right now your starters are fairly entrenched at being Rudy Ford and Darnell Savage. But that next line could very well be Tarvarius Moore and Anthony Johnson Jr. And don't be shocked at all if this 7th round pick begins to compete if Savage falters or if Ford can't replicate his success on the defensive side of the ball that he had last year. So ultimately, whether the Packers bring back Adrian Amos remains to be seen. They might have found a future Adrian Amos in Anthony Johnson Jr. Thanks for checking out today's video. I will be back on Friday reviewing all of the UDFAs. Other than that, I do have a few really cool announcements that I'm ready to make next week. So hang around here at Lombardi Time Brews. I hope you had an absolutely fantastic Wednesday. Hope your week is going great. And as always, go Pack Go.